Okay, can you guys hear me all right? Yep. Okay, we're on page 51. This world of ours. So this world of ours has made more material progress in the last century than all the millenniums which went before. Almost everyone knows the reason. Students of ancient history tell us that the intellect of men in those days was equal to the best of today. Yet in ancient times, material progress was painfully slow. The spirit of modern scientific inquiry, research, and invention was almost unknown. In the realm of the material, men's minds, is that thinking part, right, were fettered by superstition, tradition, and all sorts of fixed ideas. So we talked about the first three barriers to spiritual progress. They were on page, what was it, 48. First three was obstinacy, right? Just being stubborn. You tell me to go left, I go right. Sensitive, right? Yeah, you say boo, I cry. And then the third one is unreasoning prejudice. So here's number four. Number four is superstition. Number five is tradition. And number six is all sorts of fixed ideas. So these are the six barriers for spiritual growth, which center in the mind and center in our thinking. And they're making a reference and they're correlating it between the history of mankind and how slow things were made, even though the people that were had the intellect had the same intellect of today. But why was it so damn slow? Is because of superstition, tradition, and all sorts of, fixed ideas. So some of our contemporaries of Columbus thought a world was, thought the round Earth was prosperous. It's funny, I got a coworker who thinks the world is flat right now. And I can't have a conversation with him because he has a fixed idea. And it's set in stone. You can't convince him otherwise. So no wonder why he has some slow progress with some things. But I mean, you just go into outer space, you'll see that there's a curvature of the Earth. But if you told that to someone, that's blasphemy. That's crazy. Like that's not possible because it's fixed inside of our thinking because we probably learned it from another person in X, Y, and Z, right? So others came near putting Galileo to death for his astronomical heresy. So I'll pass it along the page because she's pretty good with the history stuff. So come on in, Paige.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And yeah, what we're trying to do is some of that, what I like to call that spiritual judo or that spiritual jujitsu. So we're taking the barriers that we have to belief in a power greater than ourselves, and we are flipping them on their heads. And so what it's saying is this idea that when we talk about the world of the material, we as a society were held back by old ideas, perhaps a little like the old ideas I might be bringing about a conception of a power greater than myself. And so, what was holding society back? Old beliefs. That's what was holding society back. Now, in the world of the spirit or spiritual, what is holding me back but old beliefs? And so, what do I need to bring to the table? But this spirit of inquiry, research, and invention, this curiosity, that's what it's asking me to bring. And if I'm willing to do that, as opposed to being, nope, it is the way that it is, I can grow. I can grow. Now, when it talks about some of the contemporaries of Columbus thought around Earth preposterous, technically no. Columbus, maybe not the good guy, but that's most of the people in the world throughout history at that point were like, now, girl, it's round. But Columbus thought it was smaller than it was. But for Bill Wilson, he would have grown up and he would have heard that story. And the lesson was the takeaway from it, just like when we hear some things in AA about AA history that may or may not be true, there is a message in the story. And the message in that story for us is that idea that, okay, maybe at one time we were absolutely convinced the world was flat and you couldn't tell me nothing, even though they knew it was round, but they couldn't tell me nothing. And then this guy goes around, lands in the Caribbean, is like, no, we're here we are. It's a round planet. And we're like, you know what? I'm open to that. I'm going to change my mind. So that experience changed our minds. Then we talk about Galileo and near putting others to Galileo nearly being put to death for his astronomical heresies. So before Galileo, we as a society were convinced that the earth was the center of the world or the universe. We were the center of the universe. And then Galileo shows up with his little telescope and his science, probably some calculus. I feel like that was, no, that's somebody else. I don't know. But he was coming with his smart stuff, looking at the space and all that. And he's like, uh-oh, Earth is not the center. The sun is at the center. And at the time, the church was like, you can't say that. You take it back. Take it back or we'll kill you. Take it back. Take it back. And he's like, no take backsies. Punch buggy, no returns. You know, that vibe. I might not be doing history as accurate as it was. But Galileo is a perfect metaphor for what we're talking about here. Because it's a little like I come to the rooms of 12 step, and what am I absolutely convinced? Well, I am convinced that I am at the center of the universe. I'm at the center, like Earth being at the center, and that everything revolves around me. And you might be like, girl, that's not me. I don't relate to that. Well, I'll let you know. I don't show up thinking I'm the best person ever. Look at me at the center. No, I show up thinking I'm the worst human being that ever lived, and the calamity of the universe was caused by my breathing and pure existence. I'm the worst, and it's all about me. I'm at the center. And so, what do I got to do? I come here and I've got to change my mind. Then maybe I'm not at the center. Maybe what is at the center is light. And that sun, you know what I mean? Yeah, the world doesn't revolve around me, and Scott does not have the sunlight that is shining out of his behind. Which I don't know, you're pretty sunny most mornings. But that idea, and I love throughout the book, there's this wonderful metaphor. And the metaphor is of God as light. And we see that used again and again and again. And I love it. It's one of my favorite metaphors because light is not simply what I see. Of course, I see light. I turn on the light, I turn off the light. You know, the sunset happens, I see light. But light is also the way in which I see, just like I can see God. But God is also the lens through which I see. And this idea that I got to put God at the center of my universe. In fact, the paragraph above that we ended on last week, it said, when many hundreds of people are able to say that the consciousness of the presence of God, that with knowing that capital P presence in the here and now of God is the most important fact of their lives. What's at the center? And that's what I got to do. I got to put this power at the center. And then I revolve around that, you know, as opposed to spinning in circles like how I was doing before. Alrighty. So that's essentially the metaphor. We had old ideas that held us back in terms of science. We were given good reason. Boom, changed our minds. Amazing. Is it possible we could do that with the spiritual? Now, here is some more spiritual jujitsu. So it says, we asked ourselves this, are not some of us just as biased and unreasonable about the realm of the spirit as were the ancients about the realm of the material? Is it possible, just by chance, is it possible that we might be a little biased and unreasonable? You know what I'm saying? Just holding on to our old, no, there's no way, no way. And I'm fighting it, right? And it says, as were the ancients about the realm of the material. Even in the present century, American newspapers were afraid to print an account of the Wright Brothers' first successful flight at Kitty Hawk. Had not all efforts at flight failed before? Did not Professor Langley's flying machine go to the bottom of the Potomac River? Was it not true that the best mathematical minds had proved that man could never fly? Now, the next sentence is going to talk about birds, so I'm going to save that for a bit. Terry knows what it's like. I'm sitting in a hotel parking lot. I got my binoculars. I'm like, look, a European starling. Not a shock. You'll see those everywhere, but like, woo, birding. But let me tell you, this was a point in the book where I'm like, what are we talking about? You know what I mean? When I first was reading this, you had lost me by the time we got to electricity. Now we're talking about the Wright brothers. What the heck does that have to do with my alcoholism, my drug addiction, or whatever brings you to this all inclusive study? Like, what the heck does this have to do with anything? Well, so what we're talking about is men of faith and that ability to change our minds. So there's this guy. Hold on, let me see if I can do. Oh, I don't have all the announcements in the chat. I'm like halfway through that, but we got Professor Langley. Oop, yeah, pointed the right way. Here's our guy, Professor Langley, handsome fellow. I do that with all the co-founders and all the history people. I'm like, a handsome fella. Wouldn't we swipe right on him for Tinder? Your sex ideal can be different than mine. That's not what a sex ideal is about. Focus page. So this is our guy, Professor Langley. And Professor Langley was a scientist and a researcher. And he was given $50,000. 50,000, was it 50,000? I think it might have been more, but at least $50,000 by the U.S. Army. They gave him $50,000 to build a flying machine, an aeroplane. Now, one of the things I will point out is you might be like, girl, why didn't the Air Force chip in for a little of that? Well, they didn't have an Air Force. You got to have an airplane before you have an Air Force. So they didn't have one. So I got $50,000 by the U.S. Army. And he was a man of science, and he was a man of means, and he was a man of intellect. And he's in Washington, D.C. And he's got all this money, he's got all these resources, he's got the top-notch military scientists in the United States at the time. And so what he puts together, now I'm gonna again, I'm going a little ham on the screen share, but what he built was the aerodrome. By the way, I'm kicking myself in the butt because when I do the video that goes on YouTube, links to that will be in the chat. I always then add these things in, which is just more work for me. So I'm really punishing myself later. But here we got the aerodrome. And by the way, I want to point out how much cooler would it have been if he was successful? You know what I'm saying? Because it would be, who wants to go to an airport and sit on the airplane, taxiing, and having your pretzels that are too small. I'm here for an aerodrome. Let's go to the aerodrome port. Woo! Because I'm fun at parties. But so he built this aerodrome. And the aerodrome was the culmination of money and science and the best of the best. And so they put it on this little houseboat thingy. And the Potomac, again, what the frick is a Potomac? The Potomac is a river that goes through Washington, D.C. And so that is the aerodrome. And what the plan was they have a little catapult on that bad boy, and they were going to catapult it. And what it was going to do, and I should have another one of these prepped and ready to go. I do. So what was going to happen is it was going to soar, and we can see the little boat, and it was going to get catapulted, and it was going to go, and it was going to fly, and man was going to meet the air. And what happened? Well, it crashed into the Potomac River. And from that point in society, we were convinced that there is no way man could ever fly. And I was telling Terry that I love doing talks about Professor Langley because Professor Langley, now I don't know if he's I don't know too much about him, but I'm sure he was a decent guy. If he wasn't, I didn't look too hard to it. But I'm not actually teasing Professor Langley. Ooh, he received in 1898. He received a congressional grant for 51,000. Boom! Look at me with my numbers being mostly accurate. Yes. So Oh, and let's give Charles M. Manley a little credit. That was his trusted assistant. I didn't know that, but he sounds like a manly guy. Am I right? See what I did there? That was an impromptu pun. I'm sorry, Terry, if there's a sudden mass exodus of attendance, it couldn't possibly be the pun. Uh, but so they built this aerodrome, and I use Professor Langley as a stand-in for self-will. So I used all my power, all my resources, all my ability to try to control and enjoy my drinking and my drug use. And wouldn't you know it, the aerodrome of Page's self-will, it took off and crashed into the Potomac River of my life. And then I used all my power and my resources and my ability to try to stay sober on my own will, my own way to do it myself. And I crashed into the Potomac River of my life. And heck, I'll even come to a place like this with people like you and try to do this my way, pick and choose, try to do this thing cafeteria style. Guess where I end up? That's right, the Potomac River of my life. And so if we look at Professor Langley as a stand-in for self-will and us doing it our way, we come here and we are absolutely convinced, and we need to be convinced that no one could help us. But we come here with this idea, man could never fly. There's no freedom for me. But there were two bicycle repairmen in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Shout out North Carolina. I always, yeah. Uh, and Kitty Hawk, it's a key, and they flew. They built this airplane, and it flew for what, like 7, maybe 11 seconds, shorter than the distance of some modern airplanes for sure. And in that moment, we were absolutely convinced that man could fly. And we're going to see that how open-minded we became about this issue of flight. And so it's like that here. And the metaphor, we're going to see the Wright brothers a couple times, at least two more times in this chapter. And the Wright brothers are examples of me sitting on the ground and watching all of you fly, but being convinced, no. And actually, I do this talk where I joke about it's a little like step two is a little like my struggle with step two is a little like me showing up at the Calgary International Airport and then gaslighting the airline employees. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you work. I have a sponsor that works at WestJet. Oh, you work at WestJet? It's an airline. You work at WestJet. I know you believe airplanes work for you, but they don't work for me. It's like, girl, just get your shoes off, go through security, get on the plane, enjoy your pretzels, right? I am seeing that you guys are flying, and I'm still here like, no, no, there is no airplane. So where I'm at, I just gotta believe that the Wright brothers have taken flight, and from there a more open mind can grow. So it says, had not people said that God had reserved this privilege to the birds? I should do a big book bounce around with all the bird references. There's not many, and do they flow together? Nope. But that's things I do sometimes. And it says only 30 years later, the conquest of the air was almost an old story. And airplane travel was in full swing. In fact, it was so in full swing that Bill and Emmy had chartered an airplane to get drunk and landed at the grand opening of the Manchester, Vermont airfield and passed out drunk in front of the band. You know what I mean? It was already a thing. It already existed. So we were able to open our minds. Over to you, Terry. Pew pew.
Oh, thank you, Jade. Can you do me a favor? Can you look up the 1930s definition of fettered
Yes,
and also
absolutely.
handicap?
Yep.
Handicap. And you pays a great job explaining that this dude, Professor Langley, failed. And people believed it because he was he won a Congressional Medal of Honor. I think I just read it in the chat. It was known that this guy was the best of the best, and he failed at it. Then no one else could do, or no one else could make a machine fly because of that. And they literally were scared, ruthless to print something on the Wright brothers. because of that. And back to the word fettered and back to the word handicapped, these are barriers for any type of growth, spiritual, material, whatever it is. And fettered, I believe, is to be chained down. And I know Bill has kind of another fetish. He likes horses. It's all throughout the book. You look at 24, you look at step 9, we take the bit in our teeth. You look at the four hideous horsemen, and also looking at we're fettered. We're chained down by these old ideas. All right. And I have no growth from it. And I kind of look at my current experience with having a closed mind. I mean, I would always get a little touchy, a little, you could say, disturbed when people talk about this is a twofold disease versus a threefold disease. You guys ever hear that before? You get like, oh no, it's threefold. No, 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 it's twofold, right? And if I take a step back and I really look at it with an open mind, keyword is open mind. If I look at, so let's say the twofold cats first, right? Okay, well, they're basically saying that we suffer from a mental disease, that yeah, spirit is God. He never gets sick, right? So that makes sense. Okay, but then also look at the threefold they talk about in the big book, right? Once a spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. They call us spiritually sick. And we're in the fourth step, right? We suffer from that three things, right? So both are right and both are wrong. Both have they're right. They talk about the 2 points I just talked about, but both are wrong because they're judging each other. Have you ever walked into a room and you judge someone based because they said twofold? Or they said threefold? What about people who say the word recovering? I just heard someone yesterday, she has 67 years sober, and she called herself a recovering alcoholic. And she's talking about the big book and shouting great tidings. Yeah. So yet again, the big book will define the word for you if you allow it to define a word for you. It defines the word recovered in the forwards. We recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. Both technically have a close definition to it, but the thing is I'm being chained down by these old ideas. I became a big book worshiper. I got to the point where if you are not doing the steps to the big book, you're wrong. That means that I have a monopoly on God. I understand the best path to God, which is me having a closed mind to other options. This is all stuff that, what is an old idea? Anything that happened a second ago, any idea that I had a second ago. And I have to constantly keep an open mind because if I'm disturbed or if I'm upset, if you say something that I don't agree with based on something I learned a second ago, I'm going to be thinking about it and judging you, and I'm going to be completely blocked off from progress. Just like the dudes we're talking about with the Wright brothers, just like we're talking about us being chained down with Columbus and the Earth being round, just like with Galileo almost being put to death. Same stuff. I can have a spiritual death here. Actually, does not mean I physically die, but I will be separated from a contact of power. Right. I just wanted to touch on that. And Paige, did you find the definition of those two words? And then I'll go into the next paragraph.
Absolutely. So fetter, it is chain or shackle for the feet, usually. A restraint, hindrance, also to place fetters upon, chain, bind, hinder. So to limit, to prevent. Now,
Right.
handicap is certain conditions imposed on contestants in in race in races or other contests in order to bring about equality as nearly as possible. So, like in golf, where it's like we're going to do something to
Yeah.
hold you back because you're just going to crush it at golf. Can't relate, not a golfer. But yeah, hopefully
Gotcha.
that's gotcha.
Gotcha. Thank you. Uh, and that explains a lot of things. And look at your experience with those six barriers. Look at your current experience. Are there areas in your life that you're being stubborn about? I'll take a second and write that down. Like I'm gonna look at things that I've been obstinate about, stubborn about, and just have God, hey, God, can you please show me what I've been stubborn about lately? And then you write something down. What about having unreasoning prejudice? Ask God, hey, where in my life today am I holding unreasoning prejudice? Right? Where's the other one? A sensitive. Where am I being sensitive? Oh, people are talking about me. Like, that's a good one, right? I think, oh, do my coworkers like me? Does my boss think I'm a good worker? That's my current experience with that. I get sensitive at work. Anyone been sensitive at work? Yeah, I have, right? Well, look at your current experience with superstition. Anyone have any superstition? I'm afraid of ghosts. Going into a haunted house. Any superstitious stuff, right? This might happen. You look at your current experience or your current ideas that you're being fettered or chained by or held back or handicapped by that you have superstitions of. And ask God to write through you, right? What about traditions? That's a good one. Anyone with traditions and stuff like that. Like, I don't know anything about the traditions of the Muslims, or I don't know anything about Judaism, but I don't really am you talk about it. I don't want to learn about it. That's me having a closed mind towards it. So if I see someone doing some type of tradition, because I've never done it before, I don't have that experience with it, and I'm a little upset, I feel out of place. Why don't I have an open mind and ask questions about it? I don't know. Look at your current experience with traditions all throughout your life, right? Okay, what about dinner has to be at 6 o'clock? Anyone miss their six make it at 6:15? My mom would get pissed. You guys better be here at 6 o'clock, right? And if it's 6:05, we're in trouble. And she's disturbed and upset because 6 o'clock is tradition, right? I mean, just think about any traditions in your life. These are the things that are mentally holding us back from spiritual growth. These are barriers. And it doesn't matter. I don't give a shit how much time you have. I really could care less. This is talking about your current experience today, right? I think I've only met two people who are possibly at the point of being enlightened. Paige, you're right up there. Dave K as well, right? Those are my two homies that are like right there where I don't see them getting held back by anything. They always want to grow. But I am someone who is painfully progress in this program because I've been handicapped and I've been fettered or chained down with old ideas. I'm still growing up. I'm like a little 6-year-old walking around, like I'm growing up on a constant basis. Do I want to grow in the image and likeness of my creator? Do I want to actually grow up? Do I want to graduate spiritual kindergarten and go to spiritual middle school? Do I want to grow up? These are things that we're going to look at because if you're aiming for the perfection of God, you're not being what is the word, complacent. And complacency could take us out straight up, right? All right, there we go. Tangents. Tangents Anonymous. Yeah, but if you've never been here before, we go on tangents a lot here. All right. But in most 52, but in most fields, our generation has witnessed a complete liberation of what? Our thinking. This is, I think I wrote down, this is the 34th time they mentioned the word thinking or thoughts or intellect. I've been looking at when I go through it, we agnostics, we're not asking you to believe. We're not looking at that. We're looking at our current agnosticism, just like I did with that spiritual exercise with you guys with superstition, tradition, and all of those fixed ideas, right? But show any longshoreman a Sunday supplement describing the proposal to explore the moon by a means of a rocket, and he will say, I bet they do it. Maybe not so long either. I mean, this book was written, what, 1939? There was no such thing as a rocket back then. I think they launched the rocket in 1969 or something like that. Yeah. So basically 30 years later, they launched it and talk about the progressive thinking, open-mindedness to someone who's looking at, all right, maybe they will do it. It is not our age character. You could just describe this entire chapter with this sentence. It is not our age characterized by the ease which we discard old ideas, fixed ideas, traditions, superstitions, stubborn, all that stuff for new. You could describe this entire chapter just like that, right? By the complete readiness which we throw away a theory, ideas, thinking, or a gadget which does not work for something new, which does. I don't know the definition of new. If you could find please, if you can, that'd be great. What's the definition of new from what I've been told is something I've never experienced before, right? So this is me having an open mind to a new experience. That's why we gave you guys a lay aside, bro. We said it In the beginning, I say it all the time. If you never heard the lay aside prayer or the set aside prayer, check out Google, and say it in the morning, afternoon, and all throughout the day, and you'll be a much more open-minded individual in all your affairs. But think about this for a second. Discarding old things for new. Now, I'm big. I grew up with PlayStation, and when PlayStation 1 dropped, I was like, yeah, this is the shit, right? This is my stuff right here, right? And I was all about PlayStation 1. And then PlayStation 2 came out. What I do with PlayStation 1? I discarded PlayStation 1 in a heartbeat because the new PlayStation 2 came out. And I'm all about PS2 now. I played NBA 2K2. Yeah, I remember. Oh, this is so funny. I remember I took acid and I played NBA 2K2 and I lost. I thought I was kicking tail, Paige. I thought I was kicking tail in that game. And afterwards, I lost 100 to 1 or two or something like that. I was up all night tripping balls, listening to Jim Morrison, the Doors, right? Good old times. You know how old I was? I was 14 years old that time. And I had to I was a camp counselor the next day. I was pretty hungover that day. Yeah, I mean, so what happened when PlayStation 3 came out? What happened to PlayStation 2? I literally immediately disregarded it and I tossed it out because now PlayStation 3 came out. And what the PlayStation 3 could do, they could play DVDs on there. Anyone who's old enough to remember DVDs, oh my God, I'm getting old now. Yeah, or phones that are attached to the cord, right? Yeah. Now I'm all about PS3 now, and it's got Blu-ray. Like good quality TV. This is PS2 is gone, baby. I don't want to touch that. But then what happened when PlayStation 4 came out? Bye-bye PlayStation 3. I discarded that in a heartbeat because the new stuff came out. And and now I'm playing online. That's pretty cool to do. I'm playing against, I don't know, probably 12-year-olds who are kicking my tail in golf and Call of Duty and blah blah blah. And what happened when PS5 came out? Well, I didn't have enough money. I was that time to buy PS5. But what happened to PS4? I stopped playing PS4 because PS5 came out. I just started to say now I actually have PS5s looking right out there. I've actually played on Thursdays, Fridays when he goes to sleep. Those are my 2 days after 10 o'clock. That's my me time, you could say. But look how easy it was for me to discard something old like PlayStation for a new one. What about doing that with our current thinking today? In all your affairs and everything that we just discussed. And they're going to talk about how our thinking has kicked our tail in the next paragraph, right? How we've been worshiping our thinking. And because of that, this is what happens. I'm full of fear. I'm unhappy. I'm being pounced on by misery and depression. And I can't be a real help to other people. All that stuff, right? And over to you, Paige. Sorry, I'm talking too long.
Oh
Pew, pew, pew.
no, not at all. Pew pew pew. It's funny when we say pew 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 without that pew inflection, like a very dry and a pew pew to you. Uh, so first things first, because I'll lose it if I don't find it. New, recent in origin, modern, novel, lately made, produced, invented, or discovered, recently entered upon or commenced, not previously used, fresh. Also, if you're wondering why Terry's asking me to look things up, it's because I happen to have a copy of a dictionary from the 1930s, because I'm fun. I'm just fun. Woo! And also, I love that you're talking about the because PS2. Oh, baby, that was the goat. I mean, I don't have a PS5, but PS2. Those that know, that was the goat of video game systems. I'm gonna upset people that enjoy Xbox. My apologies. But I used to play. I'm on this tangent, but I'm bringing this in. I used to play a lot of Madden and college football. I like sports. Oh, and hockey. I'm a Canadian. We gotta have the hockey. I don't know how the hockey's going, Rob. So if it's not going well, I'm sorry. Uh, but I what I would play, they'd have the EA Sports. It's in the game. Like that would be how it started. Some of you guys know what I'm talking about. Some of you don't, and that's fine. But the slogan. It's in the game. And that I was thinking about that as Derry was talking. It's like it's in the game. And what happens is I come to meetings and I'm sitting on the bench and I'm watching the people. I know it's Leafs do or die tonight. I know I have had Rob in my heart. Uh, these are things I'm aware of, you guys. And also, Andrew, I get you. I know. Go sports. Uh, sorry, focusing. But I come to the rooms at 12 step and the meetings, it's like I'm sitting on the bench and I'm watching them play. But the magic that I'm after is in the game. I've got to get off the bench and get into the game. And how I do this is through the actions that are outlined in this book. That's how I play. Uh, that's what I got to do. And some of you guys know I also, because we're talking about video games, I know. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. As a millennial, I want to apologize profusely for the constant need in video game upgrades. My bad. My bad. Oh, yeah. But I also have this metaphor. And like I was speaking, Professor Langley is a beautiful stand-in for me living in self-will. You see, when I'm living in self-will, you know, us millennial kids, when we're growing up and we got a sibling that's a little bit, this works better if we're the older sibling. Some of you guys know what's coming. You're the older sibling, or if you didn't grow up in that generation, you got kiddos that had a significant age difference. Now, the older sibling will be playing on the video game system. And then what inevitably happens is the little sibling comes and says, I want to play. I want to turn. And so what does the older sibling do? They give them a controller that is not plugged in. Now, this is a stand-in for me in self-will, because I'm doing things. You know what I mean? I am pushing the buttons and I am working my butt off, like I'm clicking the triggers, I'm pushing the buttons, I'm moving the joysticks. Man, I am doing it. But it doesn't seem to quite line up right and it doesn't seem to work, but I'm doing these things and I'm not getting the results. And so if I'm here today and I'm not getting the results, is it possible that I'm trying to play God and I'm working with a controller that's not plugged in? I can mash all the buttons I want, but it's not going to get me where I need to go. Now, to define something a little older, a longshoreman and a Sunday supplement. So many of you know what longshoremen are because they currently exist. But again, I live in Alberta. It is landlocked. We don't have longshoremen. We have rig workers. You know, you go up to Fort Mac for 2 weeks. You know what's up. Yeah, we don't have longshoremen. What the heck's a longshoreman? Well, a longshoreman, for those that don't know, are people that work on the docks that are loading and unloading the boats. It's a dock worker. So show what it's saying is like show any blue collar average Joe and then a Sunday supplement. So for those of you that remember paper newspapers, bear with me. Y'all know on Sundays, ooh, that was the one that had the good comics on there. And you know, if you took Silly Putty, you can you can get the comic on the Silly Putty. Sorry, and that doesn't work. We can't do that with the program. We got to actually, I don't know. Not everything needs to be a metaphor page. It'll get distorted if I try to Silly Putty the program. Alrighty. But the Sunday supplement would be like an extra story that they would add to the Sunday newspaper that they'd been like working on all week. Like, so, and if you think of the plays and shows where you'd have that little newspaper boy that has the over hat and the big too baggy clothes, and they're like, extra, extra, read all about it. That's what the Sunday supplement is. It's that extra addition to the Sunday newspaper. So what we're saying in that paragraph is we have gone from absolutely no way man could ever fly. You see what happened to Professor Langley with the Potomac to, oh, now anyone, your average Joe, there could be man on the moon. Now, I will say we now have self-landing rockets, and most of us are zooming into this. The signal is going off satellites, which are in space, you know, and like, and we still don't have a solution for this illness that doesn't involve a power greater than ourselves. I'm just going to throw that out there. We've made tremendous technological advances, but we still don't have an answer that doesn't involve this power. And yeah, that ease, and Terry's talking about the video games. Oh, we got an update on the score, 0-0. I might not update if something exciting happens, but I'm glad everything's okay. But when we talk about that, getting rid of old ideas, modern things have been made with what is known as planned obsolescence. It's, you know, how people like they don't make things like they used to. No, they're made to break down, so you got to rebuy them. Well, I might need to do that with my old ideas because they aren't working. It's broken down. It's not repairable. You know how I know? Because I keep getting loaded and I want to die. And I'm experiencing what is coming in the next paragraph. So what we're going to talk about in the next paragraph is what is known as the bedevilments. And I had a feeling Terry was going to ask, so I was on the ball. Look what I got over here, a definition, bedevilment. So this is going to be a super easy definition to understand, lemon squeezy. I don't need to explain it any further. It says the state of being vexatiously and bewilderingly disordered or confused. I know, it just rolls off the tongue. So to bedevil is to throw into disorder or confusion, to spoil or corrupt by an evil agency. I have a friend who loves the bedevilments and speaks about it being like, it's like I'm controlled by devils. It's like there is a force that has me. So what we're going to read is what is known as the bedevilments. And it says, we had to ask ourselves why we shouldn't apply to our human problems this same readiness to change our point of view. So the bedevilments are a beautiful stand-in for the spiritual malady. That's what we're talking about. It is how we feel sober and a conscious sense of disconnect from God. I don't know that's what it is, but I know the bedevilments and I feel them. And the reason it's talking about our human problems is the bedevilments are not limited to addicts. They're not limited to alcoholics. They are not limited to people who have compulsive addictive behaviors, whatever's bringing you to this study. It is a part of the human condition. But what we treat in 12 step is this. We treat the spiritual malady. We treat the bedevilments. We treat that profound sense of emptiness and loneliness, and we treat it with a spiritual experience. Again, all we're trying to believe in step 2, where we're at in this book, is that it could be possible to have a spiritual experience. That's it, that they exist, right? I'm just not going to gaslight Terry about being on an airplane, you know, because that's rude. That is rude. All right. So we had to ask ourselves why we shouldn't apply to our human problems this same readiness to change our point of view. So change our mind, why we shouldn't change our mind when we look at our human problems. And we can ask ourselves, is this our experience? Is this how I feel? Is this how I'm feeling now? So, and we're talking about sober. We're having trouble with personal relationships. Are we? How are our personal relationships? And how would our personal relationships say about how we're showing up? You know, because that's the flip side of the coin. We couldn't control our emotional nature. You know that, yeah, that flying off the handle. I'm happy. I'm so sad. I'm sobbing. Like I'm just all over the place. You know, an emotional roller coaster. Are we there? It says we were a prey to misery and depression. That idea that that misery and that depression, man, it is on us and I can't get free. You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to run from it and it's got me. It says we couldn't make a living. Now that feeling I can't make a living, that doesn't mean I'm unemployed. It can mean I'm unemployed. It can mean I go from job to job to job to job to job. It can also mean that I am underemployed, that I'm burnt out at work, that I dread every morning when I get up to have to face another 9 to 5 or 12 to 12 or whatever your work is. Or maybe I'm spending it faster than it's coming in. I couldn't make a living. We had a feeling of uselessness. Can I relate to that? We were full of fear. We were unhappy. We couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. Yeah. And I'll tell you, when I wanted to be of real help to other people, I care about people. I'm codependent as heck. I genuinely care about other people and I wanted to be of real use to other people and I couldn't. And if we're raising our hands and we're checking the boxes and we're saying that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me, is it not more important that I get an answer for the pain and the suffering that I'm experiencing in the here and now than whether or not Apple puts on an extra camera on their next iPhone? Do you know what I mean? Like, is it possible that an answer to that is more important than whether we should see newsreels of lunar flight? Of course it is. It doesn't matter if the next rocket that goes out into space can land by itself and does something cool. I mean, it's great for those that love space, and I love that for those that love space. But it is way more important that I don't wake up every single day wanting to die. That's more important. And that's who I am sober. And we talk about the bedevilments. It's important to talk about the spiritual malady. That's not how we diagnose the illness. We can diagnose it based on the obsession and the allergy. But it's important to look at the spiritual malady because I thought y'all just showed up and went to meetings and were happy and stuff. Like I thought because I was miserable, I couldn't make a living, feeling of uselessness, a prey to misery and depression. I thought it was my andas. I thought it was my outside issues. I thought it was, I thought I was different from you. But again, that's what we're treating. Now, I'm going to share with you. When we talk about a basic solution to these bedevilments, what is the solution to the bedevilments? Well, the solution is the spiritual awakening. That's what I need. But if you're like, girl, I don't believe you. Hold on. Woo! We're going to compare and contrast the bedevilments with the ninth step promises. I made this little like I didn't come up with the idea, but I made it look like this. And so I have it so it's ninth step versus bedevilments, and then bedevilments versus ninth step because they aren't like perfect one for one. You gotta point a little bit. So when it talks about in the bedevilments, we were having trouble with personal. I'm making that bigger. We were having trouble with personal relationships. What we were talking about. Hide sidebar. What we're talking about is what happens in the ninth step is we're going to lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Man, if I'm showing up to my relationships, not interested in selfish things, interested in the people that I have in my life, my self-seeking slip away, guess what? They're going to get better. Couldn't control our emotional natures? I will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. When it talks about being a prey to misery and depression, man, our whole outlook and outlook, our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. When it says we couldn't make a living, it talks about fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. That feeling of uselessness that we see here on page 52, man, that feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. They show up on page 52 full of fear. Well, now it says we will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. I will go from being unhappy on 52 to we are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. When on page 52, step 2, I can't seem to be of real help to other people. I am actively making amends and I will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. When I can't seem to be of real help to other people, again, no matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. And how do I get there? How do I get from the bedevilments on 52 to the ninth step promises? Well, that is the purpose of the 12 steps. 4 through 9 is going to take me there. So over to Terry. Pew, pew.
Yeah, I mean, I think you do exactly what it says from this page to 83. Yeah. You'll no longer be experiencing these bedevilments. This is what it feels like to be separate from God. Um, I was taught this a long time. I had it in my old book, but I guess it's like a barometer to see where you're at spiritually as well. Usually these bedevilments and the four hideous horsemen are page 18. They come alive during the process of self-will and riot. They come alive during the recuperative or regenerative powers of the ego. The ego comes back. And I forgot this too more. I just forgot them. But um, what I was taught was bedevilments means to be tormented. I'm being tormented by these things. on a day-to-day basis. And because of my thinking, and look at your experience with this, and ask yourself, you on your own power, your thinking power, are you able to repair your own personal relationships? You know, get rid of that trouble. You know, you on your own power, choice, and control, are you able to control your emotional natures? You know, I wasn't. I was like, I couldn't control it all. Are you on your own power? Can you make misery or depression go away? You know, ask yourself that. You know, you on your own power, are you able to make a living? You know, and make a living kind of, yes, it does mean financials, but it means I'm not comfortable living in my own skin. And I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror sometimes. You know, you on your own power, can you make a living? No, I just always kind of fell short. You know, me on my own power, am I able to make uselessness go away? Am I able to feel useless, of use to people? No, I always fell short of that. You know, you on your own power, are you able to, have your fears go away? Bye bye, fears. Yeah. No, I had 25 fears on my first inventory that I wrote, and it says 100 fears. I should have had another 75 to go. I was just riddled with fears. It was just attached to every fiber of my body, right? And I could not destroy self-will with self-will. I couldn't make my fears go away with more fear. I always just came up short. On you and your own power, were you able to make yourself happy? No. I was always like kind of content when I like did something to get what I want and I got it, and then 2 weeks later I'm not happy anymore. I always fumbled it, right? When me on my own power, was I real help to other people? Always. No, I was not. Hey, buddy. And I look at where you are, ask yourself that today. Am I experiencing any of this right now? And usually because you have some type of old idea that's holding you back. Some type of old superstition, some type of thing that you're stubborn about, or some type of fixed idea that you don't know. It's unless maybe you talk to someone else about it. I highly recommend that you get a bunch of people to hold you accountable. Steel on steel, iron sharpens iron, right? Get some people that will hold you accountable, give them spiritual consent to post you up on your BS. I mean, how else am I supposed to grow? Like, if I don't see what's wrong with me, I can't fix me with me. I need someone else to be a conduit, be a messenger, and be an agent of God, right? Yes, slice right there. Yeah, iron sharp as iron, right? And, and, and yet again, the EIEIO, right? They emphasize, they isolate. Now they're overcoming this objection with the next paragraph. And this paragraph has always been, I've seen it, and this is how I see it, is why we should find this power, why we should believe in this power, why we should believe in God, right? And it says, when we saw others solve their problems by a simple reliance upon the spirit universe, God, whatever you want to call it. Remember, that was one of our 4 ways for spiritual growth was to lay aside your prejudice about a spiritual term and ask yourself what that spiritual term means to you. I think I spoke about spirit before, spirit universe, same spirit. Energy is chilling here in New York. It's also chilling in Calgary right now. It's also chilling with Mary in Georgia. It's chilling with Sue too in Maine. It's also chilling in Jupiter, and it's all in the present moment, right? And I'm gonna pray to this God and X, Y, and Z, right? So I saw other people, like I witnessed it. I saw it with my own eyes that these people had their problems solved by just having a simple reliance upon God or the great pumpkin, whatever your conception is. We had to stop doubting the power of God. Now that was mentioned before. It's not the name of the power, it's the power behind the name that we're talking about. And talks about that on page 14, a belief in the power of God, right? We're looking for power, right? Because right now, lack of power is my dilemma. Yeah, yeah, it's my problem, right? And it said, our ideas, my thinking, did not work. with the God idea, this God thoughts, these God thinking, God consciousness did. This is why we tell our stories in Alcoholics Anonymous. This is why we are storytellers. Because I get and yeah, like if you go to meetings and you hear people talk about the solution and God, but they don't talk about their problem. Why on earth do I want what they have if I don't share the same problem with them? There's no pull, right? Anyone been brand new and you're like, what the hell is Paige talking about? Professor Langley and what the hell? What is it? But then she starts talking about her drinking. When she drinks, she lose control. She's behind the dumpster smoking crack, like, oh yeah, I've done that, like and you have pull and then you hit them with the solution afterwards. And I'm looking at someone who is a walking miracle, who drank more than me, who got high more than me, who had way more of the yets, than I did, right? You're eligible too thing. All these terrible circumstances happened to them and worse, and they're recovered and they're walking around and they're happy and they're like they're full of joy, and I want what they have. I want what they have, you know. So yeah, that's all I got. Thanks. Pew 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 pew. Back to
Pew,
you.
pew, pew. I literally was thinking, I'm not a walking miracle. So you get why that's funny. Some of you were sick of that joke. And I got nothing for you. All right. You know what was standing out to me was that idea when we saw others solve their problems. Problems. Now, of course, the main problem that I am bringing to the table in 12 step is my alcoholism or my addiction or whatever compulsive behavior. But problems, what gets solved is more than just the obsession of the mind. Man, we get to treat that spiritual malady and we get to take, like, man, problems get solved. But when we saw others solve their problems by a simple reliance upon the capital S, capital U, the problems do not get solved based solely on a belief in the spirit of the universe. They get solved based on a reliance upon the spirit of the universe. So the question is, well, how do I do that? How do I rely upon the spirit of the universe? I got problems. I got oodles of them, like oodles and poodles of problems. They come by the bucket load. How do I solve? Well, how we rely upon the spirit of the universe is the 12 steps. That is the purpose of the 12 steps, to build that reliance upon the spirit of the universe. And again, it's exactly what we're talking about when we saw others solve their problems. I come to meetings like this with people like you, people who have recovered. They drank the way that I drank. They felt the way that I felt. They used what I used. You know what I mean? They've been where I've been. They did the things that I did. Man, it's like they're reading my diary, which is not cool. Personal boundaries, y'all. But they know what it is like. And they have recovered. I listen, I can show up a little belligerent, but I cannot deny the change that has happened in your life. And the second step is only believing that it's happened for you, that it exists. And maybe, just maybe, I'm not so special that it couldn't happen to me if I do what you did. And I love, we had to stop doubting this power. And our ideas did not work. If I am here today and if I am new, if I am struggling, if I can't stay sober, or if you've been sober a while and you're like me and you know what it is like to be sober a while and not want to be here anymore. You know what it's like to be sober 3 a.m. The monster is on you. And I'm not talking about the obsession. I'm talking about the darkness is on you and it grips you. And the thought, man, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. Man, if I am experiencing that, if I know what it's like to burn my life to the ground again and again and again and again, if I've experienced all of that, my ideas aren't working. I'm killing myself. I'm killing myself in my addiction. I'm killing myself sober. I'm dying. What I have doesn't work, but what you guys have does, because you're obnoxiously happy. I know. If you are miserable, I am so annoying, and I apologize. So thank you for sticking with us. But that's what the takeaway is. This idea is that a spiritual experience works. It doesn't matter what I think about it, doesn't matter what I feel about it, doesn't matter my opinions, because I don't got experience with it yet. Does not matter whether I would like it in a different flavor. Doesn't matter if I'm like chartreuse is not my color. Like that does not matter. What matters is what we have here works. And what I've got in my life when I come to this point does not work. So am I open to trying another way? And that takes us 2 minutes over, which is not the worst that we've ever done. So thank you guys for being with us. We'll kick off next week at that bottom paragraph, and I'll stop the recording and we can wrap on up with the Serenity Prayer.